Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something really fascinating. This powerful and I think often underestimated link between our diet and our mental well-being. We all know that saying, you are what you eat.
Right.
But it turns out this seems especially true for, well, our brain health and our emotional state.
It really is a fascinating area. I mean, for so long, we've focused on diet mainly for physical health, weight, chronic diseases, that sort of thing.
Right, standard stuff.
Exactly. But the science that's emerging now, it's pretty undeniable. What we eat profoundly shapes our mood, our stress responses, even our vulnerability to mental health disorders. It's kind of a paradigm shift, really, in how we think about mental wellness.
Absolutely. And that's precisely what we want to explore today. We've gathered some compelling research, expert insights, really trying to dig into how food influences our minds.
Yeah.
Our mission is basically to pull out the key knowledge and make sense of it all for you. It's remarkable how many different research areas are pointing towards this connection now.
Yeah, and a key figure here is Wolfgang Marx over at Deakin University. He's involved with the International Society for Nutritional Psychiatry Research.
Ah, okay.
And he really emphasizes that we're now getting that our food choices can impact, brain function, mood, mental health conditions, much like they affect physical things like heart disease or diabetes. It's a fundamental rethink.
Okay, so let's dive right in. One of the most consistent findings seems to point towards the negative impact of something loads of us eat pretty regularly.
Yeah.
Ultra-processed foods.
Yes, and what's really striking is just how consistent that link is. You look at study after study, and they show this connection between diets high in these foods and, a higher risk of both depression and anxiety. That 2024 BMJ study, the one led by Marx and his team, it really hammers this home.
Right. That study found a pretty significant jump in risk, didn't it? Something like 48% higher chance of anxiety.
Yeah, and 22% higher for depression for those eating a lot of this stuff.
Wow. Those numbers really make you pause and think about your shopping cart,
Yeah, they definitely do. It starkly shows how everyday choices can potentially increase vulnerability.
But it's not all bad news.
Yeah.
Right. Encouragingly, we're also seeing strong evidence for the positive side actually improving our diet.
Exactly. It's not just about avoiding the bad stuff. Actively choosing nutrient-dense foods can have a real, tangible benefit.
Yeah. There's research showing that dietary improvements, even on their own, can lead to positive changes for people with major depression. And that 2025 review in Nutrition Reviews, one looking at 13 studies, that was interesting too, suggested the Mediterranean diet could potentially lower risks of depression, anxiety, maybe even ADHD in kids and teens.
And if you look at the bigger picture, there's other research like that 2024 study in BMC Public Health, over 7,000 adults.
Wow.
And they found lower reported stress levels in people who regularly ate more. Legumes, veggies, fruits, yogurt, fish, seafood, milk, even fruit juice. It paints a pretty clear picture.
A diverse whole food diet seems key.
It really points that way. More whole foods, potentially better mental state. It highlights this two-way street. Mental well-being isn't just in the head. Our gut plays a massive role, too.
Definitely. And it's so important to stress, like the experts do, that these dietary approaches aren't meant to, replace traditional mental health treatments, are they?
Not at all. The best approach really often involves integrating diet changes with therapies and medication if they're needed. It's an and, not an or.
Right. An additional tool.
Precisely. Which brings up a really crucial point, actually. If this connection is becoming so clear, why isn't nutrition guidance more standard in mental health care?
Yeah, I wondered about that.
Psychiatrist Drew Ramsey makes a really good point about the lack of nutrition training that mental health professionals often get.
That really jumped out at me, too. It feels like people are often left to kind of figure out this whole complex food mood thing on their own.
Yeah, it does seem like a significant gap in the system, doesn't it?
It does. So if the professionals aren't always fully equipped, what are the actual, biological ways that food links to how we feel? How does it work?
Okay, good question. As the research gets deeper, we are starting to uncover these specific pathways. It's not just a vague feeling. There are real physiological things happening. Think about inflammation and oxidative stress. A consistently poor diet can kind of create internal rust and irritation in the body, including the brain.
Rust and irritation. I like that analogy.
Yeah, this oxidative stress, the rust and inflammation, the irritation, they can mess with the delicate balance of brain cells, their communication, potentially leading to mental health issues down the line.
Okay, so inflammation, oxidative stress, key players. And food also helps boost those important brain chemicals, right? Like dopamine, serotonin.
Exactly. Certain nutrients are basically the raw materials, the precursors for these neurotransmitters. Think of it like our brain's factories needing these specific ingredients from our diet to produce essential mood regulators like dopamine and serotonin. If you don't get enough raw material,
Production slows down.
right,
Yeah.
production can falter, and that can impact our emotional state. Our diet directly provides the building blocks.
Yeah, okay, got it. Now, the gut-brain axis and the microbiome, this area, seems to be generating a lot of buzz.
Yeah.
Why is this connection so vital?
Oh, absolutely crucial. The gut and brain are constantly talking to each other back and forth through this gut-brain axis.
Like texting buddies.
Kind of, yeah. What happens in one directly influences the other, and the trillions of tiny organisms living in our gut, our microbiome, they're massive players in this conversation.
Right.
I mean, Daniel Amen points out that the gut actually makes something like 90% of the body's serotonin.
90%. Wow. That really hammers home the importance of gut health, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. So if our gut bacteria are churning out all this serotonin, well, it makes sense to look after them, right?
Definitely. So how does stress fit into this gut picture?
Well, Carolyn Wallace talks about this. Chronic stress can really disrupt the balance of our gut microbiome. Think of it like upsetting the harmony in that bustling city of gut bacteria.
Okay.
It can even weaken the gut lining, make it more permeable, sometimes called leaky gut. This dysregulation can then trigger more inflammation, which, as we said, connects back to mood and mental health changes.
It's all interconnected.
Very much so. And then there's this other interesting molecule, brain-derived neurotrophic factor,
Yeah.
BDNF.
Ah, yes. Drew Ramsey calls it brain fertilizer, right?
Yeah, it's a great description. BDNF is super important for brain health, for neuroplasticity, basically the brain's ability to adapt, change, and grow.
Like keeping the brain flexible.
Exactly. It helps brain cells grow, survive, make new connections. And what's really interesting is the research linking low levels of BDNF to depression. It suggests that, maybe boosting BDNF through things like diet could be a way to support mental well-being.
Fascinating stuff. Okay, so we've covered some of the science. Let's get practical. What kinds of food should we actually be thinking about eating more of? And I guess we need to remember, like you said, there's no single magic food.
Absolutely right. No magic bullet. And again, it's crucial to see these foods as an additional tool, not a replacement for other treatments if they're needed.
Got it.
But yeah, there are definitely overall dietary patterns like the Mediterranean diet, the DASH diet, the MIND diet that consistently emphasize certain types of foods.
And what's the common thread with those foods?
Generally, they're good at fighting inflammation, providing those building blocks for neurotransmitters we talked about, and supporting a healthy gut, all things that seem foundational for, a more stable, positive mental state.
Okay, let's break down some specific food groups then. Fish and seafood often come up.
They really do. Fatty fish, salmon, sardines, tuna, mackerel, they're loaded with those anti-inflammatory omega-3 fatty acids. Plus, they're great sources of protein, which indirectly helps make dopamine and serotonin. And Drew Ramsey highlights things like sardines, oysters, mussels, salmon as being packed with other brain boosters too, B12, selenium, iron, zinc.
Lots of good stuff in there.
Yeah, and that 2024 study in the Journal of Affective Disorders found a 26% lower risk of depression in adults eating fish 4 or more times a week. That's pretty significant.
Definitely compelling. Okay, what about fermented foods? They seem to be everywhere lately.
Yeah, they've really gained traction. Things like yogurt, kefir, kombucha, sauerkraut, kimchi, miso. They're fantastic for helping populate the gut with beneficial bacteria.
Probiotics.
Exactly. And given that gut-brain connection we keep mentioning, this can have a really positive ripple effect on mood. David Mechoulan talks about how having too many bad bacteria can be detrimental.
Right.
And there was even a study from William and Mary linking regular eating of these fermented, probiotic-rich foods to fewer symptoms of social anxiety.
Social anxiety. That's specific and really interesting. Okay, moving on to colorful fruits and vegetables, the classic advice still holds true for mental health.
Oh, absolutely. Kathleen Holton explains their bright colors come from antioxidants, which, again, help fight that oxidative stress and inflammation we talked about. Eating more berries, citrus fruits, leafy greens like spinach, kale, arugula. It's been linked to things like higher optimism, better self-efficacy, less psychological distress, even protection against depressive symptoms.
So eat the rainbow is actually good advice for your mood, too.
It really seems to be. And don't forget other richly colored ones, red cabbage, broccoli, bell peppers, packed with vitamins, minerals, antioxidants. and cooking them with a bit of olive oil. Even better, good
A
fats.
good tip. Okay, beans and legumes. Sometimes they're a bit overlooked.
They shouldn't be. Lentils, beans, they're nutritional powerhouses, full of B vitamins like folate, minerals like potassium, magnesium, iron, plus antioxidants, plant-based protein, and crucially, fiber.
Ah, fiber for the gut again.
Exactly. Fiber is fantastic for gut health, which we know impacts brain health. And some research has actually linked higher fiber intake specifically to being less susceptible to symptoms of depression and anxiety.
Interesting connection. Okay, nuts and seeds. Easy snack.
Great snack. Almonds, walnuts, cashews. They offer this brilliant mix of healthy fats, protein, slow-burning carbs, fiber, and these beneficial plant compounds called phytonutrients.
Anti-inflammatory.
Yep, anti-inflammatory effects. And Drew Ramsey also notes they might help protect against those low BDNF levels we discussed.
Okay.
And studies have found, maybe a 17% lower risk of developing depression over 5 years in adults eating up to a handful of nuts daily.
A handful a day. Doable.
Yeah. And seeds too, sunflower, pumpkin seeds, good sources of vitamin E and magnesium.
Right. What about herbs and spices? They add flavor, but do they do anything for mood?
Some might. Daniel Amen highlights cinnamon good for blood sugar, blood flow, and some animal studies suggest it might even boost BDNF, potentially having antidepressant-like effects.
Huh.
And turmeric, of course, famous for reducing inflammation. Saffron, too, that's actually shown some real promise in studies for relieving both depression and anxiety symptoms.
Saffron. Okay.
Yeah.
And finally, the one many people hope for, dark chocolate.
Yes, some potentially good news here. A square or two of good quality dark chocolate can give your mood a little lift.
Why is that?
It's down to these polyphenol antioxidants it contains. There was a 2024 study in Scientific Reports that showed significant improvement in depressive symptoms in middle-aged women eating dark chocolate daily compared to milk chocolate.
Daily dark chocolate. Sounds appealing.
Yeah, but the key, as Ramsey advises, is choosing dark chocolate with at least 70% cacao content. That's where you get the highest concentration of those beneficial compounds. Less sugar, too, usually.
Right, 70% or more. Got it.
No.
So it really sounds like the big message here is about the cumulative effect, isn't it? It's not one meal, but regularly including these good foods and cutting back on the processed stuff over time.
Precisely. It's about adopting a proactive approach, consistently nourishing your brain. And let's be honest, a lot of these foods are genuinely delicious, so it's not about deprivation.
Definitely. It's a positive step for physical and mental health.
A real win-win.
So wrapping this up, it seems really clear that our diet plays a much bigger role in our mental health than maybe we commonly realize. Specific foods, overall patterns, they show really promising links to mood and well-being.
Absolutely. And just to reiterate, while food isn't some kind of magic cure-all or a standalone treatment for diagnosed conditions, it definitely holds potential as a really powerful additional tool, something we can use to support our mental resilience.
A great way to put it. So here's a final thought for you listening. Maybe consider how even small, consistent shifts in your daily food choices could potentially have a pretty significant impact on your mood and your overall mental resilience. And perhaps ask yourself which single food category we talked about today seems most interesting or maybe easiest for you to explore a bit more in your own diet. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.